applied math, graduate degree from Carnegie Mellon, worked at Apple, small company in the West Coast, you might have heard, and Microsoft as well. And then I left industry and taught high school, actually. While I was getting certified, I taught at Swiftly Academy, and then I taught at Mount Lebanon full-time for a few years before going to Carnegie Mellon, where I teach computer science. I'm also active in outreach, so I've been in about 50 schools in the region, including this school. And I'll be back here in a few months, a couple months. We're doing something with the computer club, I believe, that I'll be here. So it's a good honor, a great honor to be here today. And it's actually really excited to see so many of you here. 8 a.m. on a Saturday, most teenagers have, at least they think they have better things to do. They're wrong. This is the place to be, but it's awesome that you're all here with us. I think it's great.
Thank you so much. So what would you say is something you're most proud of in your career?
I don't know. No, actually, it's really easy. It's my students, and I don't want to gush poetic or philosophic, but I've had about 5,000 students at CMU over the years, that old, and I've had also maybe about 1,000 high school students, either directly or through outreach. And when I look at the things that they have done, some of which I think we'll be talking about over the next while, but as like one example, there were some children, blind children in an impoverished region in India, and so students said, what can we do to help them? And a project was born where they built this hardware device that was very low battery, so it could like make do in a region that had inconsistent electricity. And then they built software to interact with that and train blind children in India to use Braille readers. And that's just one example. I could go on and on with these kinds of examples of the amazing things that my students have done. And obviously, I didn't play a major role in any of that. But the fact that I played any role in any of that is just really, really cool, and easily what I'm most proud of.
So what drew you to end up teaching at Carnegie Mellon?
That's easy. I went to college to do the obvious thing. I was pre-med, and I think the rest is obvious. It's actually true. I went to college, I was pre-med, I knew I was going to be a surgeon, there was no question at all about it. And when something interesting happened, I liked my pre-med courses. I did. I liked all of them. But I loved these computer classes I was taking on the side. I was just taking those for fun. And after enough times of liking the thing I'm supposed to do and loving this other thing, I woke up one day and said, why don't I just do the thing I love? So I did that, and I went to grad school in computer science instead of med school. And when I'm in industry, the same thing happened again. Now it's not computer science, I'm still doing that. But in Microsoft, while I'm meeting, I'm working on really cool stuff, and I got to actually work with Bill Gates, which is cool. I actually got to play Bill Gates on TV, it's true. There's a Coca-Cola commercial where I am Bill Gates, whatever. So while I'm doing that, I'm doing some outreach, and I'm teaching. And what I found is exactly the same thing. I like this Microsoft gig, but I just love teaching. And at some point, you got to follow your heart and do what you want to do. And which led me to high school. What led me to CMU? I'll be honest, teaching in high school is hard. It's exhausting, it's challenging, you don't have a lot of resources. And I had the things I wanted to do, such as now we're creating a new high school computing curriculum that's coming out of my project at CMU, giving it away for free. Those are things I wanted to do that required resources that I wasn't given in high school. You all should have endless adulation for your high school teachers. It's a very difficult job. It's much easier in college. I have 50 undergrads who assist me with what I do, and they do most of the work. I sit back and take most of the credit. But anyway, so that led me to CMU where I teach. And again, it's the idea of scale, that you have more resources available to do larger projects. That's essentially it.
So tell us about the initial spark, your first line of code.
Wow, so that would be back in the 1300s. And so, my first line of code happened this way. I was walking home from school, and I walked past a Radio Shack, which is, again, showing my age. And they had this computer, a TRS-80, that they were trying to sell, and they couldn't sell it. no one knew what computers were back then, basically, and no one bought them. That wasn't a thing. And so after walking by for like every day for weeks and weeks, I went in and I don't know, asked something about it. And the guy there said, like, they can't sell it. If I want to play around on it, sure. And I started making these games on it. There's no books. You have to use it to figure out how to use it at all. And one thing led to another. And then about a year later, I had written my first real software patent. My dad was in the self-storage industry, and I wrote software to like do the business management side of that. But it really started with a computer, some intrigue, like what is that? And the fact that no one could tell me and no one could help me made it all the more actually interesting to me. So like literally just typing random things in and having random things happen and trying to turn that into understanding of other machines. I would encourage you to do exactly the same thing, basically today. Don't hold back because you don't understand something. Dive in and use it anyway, and just start figuring out what this thing is and how to use it.
Thank you for that wonderful response. So many have claimed you have achieved celebrity status on the Carnegie Mellon's campus. Your students use the terms amazing lectures, inspirational, and respected by students to describe you. What drew you to teaching, and why do you teach the way you do?
So first, I pay people to say that, right? So it is cool the kind of response I get from my students. Obviously, there's some other students who maybe aren't quite as excited about that, but maybe they're not as outspoken, hopefully. Well, my first semester at CMU, again, 400 years ago, went very poorly. It went so poorly, I was thinking of actually quitting and going back to high school. There are reasons for that, but what it came down to was, I was given a class to teach, a sophomore class, and I was given, this is what students will know coming into class. And they didn't know it, and I figured that on the first day. They walked in not meeting the prerequisites. And I ignored that. I stuck to the contract of what I was supposed to do. I held them to an impossible standard, and everything was miserable from that point forward. Yes. So I took a step back and said, if I'm going to stay here, I'm going to evaluate what went wrong and do it better. So first, I went and identified all the top professors at CMU according to students. And I went and just sat in their classrooms and followed them and talked to them a lot. I was looking for some commonality in what they were doing. And I could find virtually none except this. They all had a student-first focus. Whatever you're going to do, meet your students at wherever they're at. If your students, for instance, over the years, students read less, believe it or not. I'm sorry, it's true. So our notes, if you look at our online notes, they're less and less reading focused. You might say that that's a bad idea. I'd say, I don't know, we're turning out some of the best computer scientists in the world, thank you. Meeting your students where it's at and making it fun. And actually I have a concrete example of making it fun. But to do this, I have to put the mic down for a minute. After you go. All right, so I want to teach a concept to you right now. I have to bring you back the cards. What a coincidence. And so I want to show you in a classroom if we want to talk about encryption, for example. Okay? One thing you could do is you could talk about RSA. Anyone here heard of RSA? No? Okay, anyone here heard of SSL, HTTPS? Any of this means something? Yeah, we can get into that. And while a few of you raised your hands, the rest of you are like, your eyes are glazing over. Oh my gosh. So let's do this instead. Get your card any question. Oh, one on top. So he picked this card. Okay, I'll see that card. Now, you haven't seen this card, have you?
I have not.
You've not seen that card. Okay, everybody does this trick a different way. But the key is for, while I'm talking to you, for Arjun to intuit what this card is. Hey, Arjun, what's this card?
5 diamonds.
What's this card? Say it nice and loud. 5 diamonds. Holy cow. Give it up for Arjun. Now, are you wondering how that just happened? Come on, are you wondering how that just happened?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, so now I'm going to teach them. Okay, so here's how it works. I'm going to give you 2 letters. The first letter is going to tell you the number, that what we call the rank of the card. It can tell you 5, but you know it's a 5. So we're going to do it with letters A, B, C, D, E. Do you understand? So E is 5. So far so good? Now I have to give you the suit. Well, I'll just give you the first letter of the suit, D for diamond. So if I said E, D, that would be the 5 of diamonds. With me? Cool. All right. Now, I'm not going to do that because if I just said ED, everyone likes to know I'm passing a clue to him. So I'm going to encode it in words. 2 words. First letter of each word. So if I say, eat donuts, that was ED. Still with me? Now if I turned to him and said, eat donuts, that would be weird, wouldn't it? So that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk. I'm going to blather. I'm going to distract you. And then I'm going to use the word okay, which is his cue. The next 2 words are the only 2 words that matter. So while I was talking, blah, 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 I said, and I'll quote, okay, everybody does this a different way. And that was it. He grabbed the everybody does, pulled out the ED, turned the E into a 5, the D into a diamond, and I was able to communicate the card to him, and he was able to what? To decode what I had encoded for him. So the idea, to put the final point on that, the idea plainly is, it's not just what you're teaching. Teaching requires learning, and learning requires engagement. And thinking about how can I package this same idea in a way that people want to consume it, in a way that people will find it interesting. Once you get far enough into a discipline, the discipline itself is interesting. You don't have to convince someone who's in their senior year of college, if they're a computer science major, that computing is interesting. They're bought in. But how do you get them there? And it's taking things that are inherently fascinating, but not banking on the subject matter, banking on also the packaging to be interesting as well.
Thank you so much. So through your attendance at events like this, and a myriad of other outreach opportunities that you mentioned, you work really hard to foster the computer science education community in Pittsburgh. Do you have any words of advice to young programmers?
It's a good question, and naturally yes. Okay. So several things. So this is advice to young programmers, and I would actually broaden that to be people interested in computing. Okay. So several things. Thing number 1, take courses. Okay. Even though I'm going to encourage you to do things on your own and be self-paced and do all that and be independent, you will not learn as much on your own, generally speaking, as when you're in a class that has, homework, and quizzes, and exams. That will push you forward to learn a lot. Second, ignore your classes and go learn amazing things. That's not contradictory advice, right? There's just different, your classes are going to move you one direction, but there's 80 directions you can go in at any given time. You should choose one of your own. Be passionate about a direction, but only go in one direction at a time. You shouldn't be like playing around with robots and trying to figure out how to use machine learning and how to figure out how to do some speech recognition and maybe building a little app. And if you do too many things, you'll spread yourself out too thin and achieve very little in all of them. So do one of them really, really well. Use your resources. You've got these green shirts, but you all know that at the end of the day, they'll disappear because, no, they'll be here on Monday. And if someone came up to you and said, hey, I'm trying to make this Swift app and I can't, would you just tell them to go away or would you help them? Help you. You've got tons of resources. You have teachers you have these resources. Use them as resources, right? Use them accordingly. Get in the game and build something, and don't stay out and just think, well, like, that's something other people do. Be that other person. You've got resources at CMU. I don't have to come here to talk to you. Like, there's an internet, there's email, there's Skype, or whatever the kids use these days, right? So there's ways to access the vast resources in the region. And then the next thing is to combine two things. First, have fun. If you're not having fun, it's not worth it. Oh, by the way, also be in the game. Like, you are on your phone, and that's not a way to be in the game. So you should be in the game and pay attention. Okay? Be in the moment. Kids these days are so distracted with these little devices that you carry everywhere that you forget to actually live. Get in the moment and do something you're enjoying and bite into it, really enjoy it. But the second thing is do something that has some meaning to you. So, for example, it could be a club that you're in. It could be a course that you're in that maybe you want to make like a flashcard system for conjugating verbs in Spanish. Whatever it is, something that has meaning to you, that brings value to the community around you. Because what you're not going to do, probably, statistically speaking, is build an app that like changes the world while you're 16. You might. I know people who have. But for everyone who has, there's going to be 1,000 who try and don't. So instead of trying to save the world, just make something a little bit better for just a few people around you. You'll learn so much by doing it. Real people will really use it. It'll be good in every way. So the three things were, get the game, have fun, and be real, do something meaningful that's meaningful to you. That's what advice I would give.
Yeah, great answer. So I want to go through some rapid fire questions, so 30 to 45 seconds. Most disruptive new technology?
Wow, that's a great question. So there's so much disruption going on now, it's hard to pick. But I would say the confluence of big data, AI, and extreme connectivity, those three are working together to change our lives dramatically in ways that will be obvious to you over the coming years. But so with machine learning and AI, think things like self-driving cars. Okay? Think things like maybe education, since that's something I focus on. The era of like static books is ending. The era of richly dynamic educational interactive software that like is modeling your cognition and adapting on the fly. But this is true of everything, from the large and the small. There are certain points where there's a before and an after. In our lifetime, computers were one of those points. Then phones, like you all grew up with phones being like, can anyone in this room imagine your life without a phone? Well, right, a few of you can, but most of you cannot, right? So that's what it's going to be with AI and ML and rich adaptive computing in just a few years. You're not going to be able to imagine doing anything without these devices that used to just be devices that you had to tell what to do, turning the table on you and now telling you what to do. That was really not a 30-second answer. So I'll stop.
Okay, the year is 2029. What are you up to?
Well, hopefully the same thing I'm doing now, to be honest. But I'd love for more of it to be in the Caribbean. But look, my job hasn't changed in 12 years, but it changes every year because every year a whole new batch of students comes in and they're completely different. And it's really what are they going to be up to. My job is and will probably remain getting them a step closer to that, which I love doing. Having said that, if you're asking, bless you, something else that I, as a side project, I created this new high school computer science curriculum that we're giving away for free to the world, and I'd love to see that expand. It's mainly made by CMU undergrads, so we're presently across the United States, but we're like in Rwanda in a village for impoverished youth there, and now we're spreading more globally, and I'll probably put more time into that as well.
Most frustrating error?
I probably should have thought more about what to say to that one. So aside from that like bad teaching moment, right, which was a very frustrating error. Trust me, it's frustrating for all my students as well as for me. I would say, and I guess I already spoke to it. When I was young, and when I was your age, I just did what was expected of me. And I just moved forward down the path to being a surgeon because that was the path of least resistance. I was good at it, everyone wanted me to do it. And I didn't realize that I'll have a larger impact on the world and I'll have a happier life if I'm true to who I am, instead of just going down a path that's been kind of laid out for me. And I've done that a couple times in my life, and I have to step back and correct and go down a path where I have more passion. So I would say that would probably has led to the greatest frustrations. When you're doing something that your heart's not in, you're not going to do it really well.
Great advice. So what is your favorite programming language?
All right, so this one's easy, although you're not going to love the answer. But none of the above. Okay. So for starters, a lot of people, especially as they start getting into computing, they get very attached to a language. And they'll say like Java is the best language, or Java is the worst language, and Python is the best language, or whatever. And Swift is clearly the best language. And so what you should say is the best language for what? And if you want to make an iPhone app, Swift is the best language. But it's the best language for that, and other languages exist that are better for other tasks. And don't get overly attached to any particular language. Okay, the language doesn't matter. If you're going to write an essay in your history class, and your essay is going to be like the greatest essay ever on why Trump is amazing or on why Trump is not amazing, you get to pick which. This is apolitical. But whichever one it is, you wrote this amazing essay, okay, that's going to convince the world of your position. Would it matter if you wrote it in English or in French, like in terms of the quality of the argument? No, the language matters for who's going to read it, but it doesn't really matter for the quality of the argument. So in computing, the language you choose doesn't really influence the algorithms you're going to use, which is the beauty of coding. The user experience, that when they use this application, they don't know what language you wrote it in. It matters to you as a programmer at some level, but it really doesn't matter for what you're building. And the emphasis should be on what you're building. And then here's the last fact, although, again, I'm sure this wasn't the answer you're looking for. Those of you who are going to go into computing, which, if you say go into computing as be a computer scientist, probably 1 or 2 in the room. If we say go into computing as to be a professional programmer, my guess is 10 to 20 in the room. If we say use computing somehow meaningfully in your life, I'm hoping nearly everybody in this room. Because computing is a very powerful tool, whether you're in business or art or music or science, and a lot of you are going to be doing many different things that you could use computing. Now here's the thing, the languages that you're going to use in your career don't even exist yet. Most of the languages that you're going to use have not yet been invented. So we shouldn't become overly attached to the language du jour, because languages come and languages go. We're still in the nascency, in the infancy of computer science as an entire domain. Think about this. How long has physics been around? Many dozens of years, okay? So hundreds and hundreds of years. Chemistry, hundreds and hundreds of years. Computer science, well, you know, dozens of years, really, right? I mean, in terms of like the modern form of it. And as we're learning more, we're very rapidly improving. And one of the places we improve the fastest is our tools, the languages. The languages keep getting better. Okay? And so try to stay unattached to a particular language and open to the idea of if it lets you work the clay, if it lets you build what you want to build, it's a good language. And if it doesn't, then we'll find a better one.
Thank you so much. Everyone give a big round of applause.